Flaxith, his face as chiseled and resolute as any statue, was sitting with 4 others at an inn in Necrom.
The situation simply is this. Everyone knows that the cemetery west of the city is haunted by some malevolent beings, and has been for many years now. The people have come to accept it. They bury their dead by daylight, and are away before Massa and Secunda have risen, and evil comes forth. The only victims to fall prey to the devils within are the very stupid and the outsiders. The Tribunal Temple is reopening a new monastery near the cemetery, and they need the land cleansed of evil. They're offering a fortune, so I accepted the assignment with the caveat that I could assemble my own team to split the reward. That's why I've sought you each out. From what I've heard, you, Nitra, are the best bladesman in Morrowind.
Nitra, a tall, middle-aged woman with cold eyes and thin lips, smiled her unpleasant best.
And you, Osmic, are a renowned burglar, though never once imprisoned.
The bald-pated young man stammered as if to refute the charges before grinning back.
I'll get you in where you need to go, but then it's up to you to do what you need to do. I'm no combatter.
Marvelous. Anything Nitra and I can't handle, I'm sure Masitha will prove her mettle. She comes on very good references as a sorceress of great power and skill.
Masitha was the picture of innocence, round-faced and wide-eyed. Nitra and Osmic looked at her uncertainly, particularly watching her fearful expressions as Flaxith described the nature of the creatures haunting the cemetery. It was obvious she had never faced any adversary other than man and Myr before. If she survived, they thought to themselves, it would be very surprising. As the foursome trudged toward the graveyard at dusk, they took the opportunity to quiz their new teammate.
Vampires are filthy creatures, disease-ridden, you know. Masitha, I understand that you know spells of restoration if one of us gets bit.
I know a little, but I'm no healer.
More of a battle mage.
I can do a little damage if I'm really close, but I'm not very good at that either. I'm more of an illusionist, technically.
Nitra and Osmic looked at one another with naked concern as they reached the gates of the graveyard. There were moving shadows, stray specters among the wrack and ruins, crumbled paths stacked on top of crumbled paths.
It's a surprisingly useful school. You see, it's all concerned with Magicka's ability to alter the perception of objects without changing their physical compositions. Removing sensual data, for example, to cast darkness or remove sound or smell from the air. It can help by...
A red-haired vampire woman leapt out of the shadows in front of them, knocking Flaxith on his back. Nitra quickly unsheathed her sword, but Masitha was faster. With a wave of her hand, the creature stopped, frozen, her jaws scant inches from Flaxith's throat. Flaxith pulled out his own blade and finished her off.
That's illusion.
Certainly. Nothing changed in the vampire's form, except its ability to move. Like I said, it's a very useful school.
The 4 climbed up over the paths to the front gateway to the crypt. Osmic snapped the lock and disassembled the poison trap. The sorceress cast a wave of light down the dust-choked corridors, banishing the shadows. An ancient creature waited until the 4 were almost out of the cemetery, and then launched himself at the sorceress. Had Flaxith not turned his attention back from the gate, she would have been ripped to shreds before she had a chance to scream. The vampire knocked Masitha across a stone, its claws raking across her back, but stopped its assault in order to block a blow from Flaxith's sword. It accomplished this maneuver in its own brutal way by tearing the warrior's arm from its socket. Osmic and Nitra set on it, but they found themselves in a losing battle. Only when Masitha had pulled herself back up from behind the pile of rocks, weak and bleeding, that the fight turned. She cast a magical ball of flame at the creature, which so enraged it that it turned back to her. Nitra saw her opening and took it, beheading the vampire with a stroke of her sword.
So you do know some spells of destruction, like you said.
Masitha replied sadly, tears welling up in her eyes.
Is it really over? Yes, and a few spells of healing too. But I can't save Flaxith.
The warrior died in the bloody dust before them. The three were quiet as they traveled across the dawn-lit countryside back toward Necrom. Masitha felt the throb of pain on her back intensify as they walked, and then a gradual numbness like ice spread through her body.
I need to go to a healer and see if I've been diseased.
Meet us at the Moth and Fire tomorrow morning. We'll go to the temple and get our reward and split it there.
3 hours later, Osmic and Nitra sat in their room at the tavern, happily counting and recounting the gold marks, split 3 ways. It was a very comfortable sum.
What if the healers can't do anything for Masitha? Some diseases can be insidious.
Did you hear something in the hall?
Nitra quickly checked the hall, but when she looked, there was no one there. She returned, shutting the door behind her.
I'm sure Masitha will survive if she went straight to the healer. But we could leave tonight with the gold.
Let's have one last drink to our poor sorceress.
Both of them left the room toward the stairs down. Nitra laughed.
Those spells of illusion won't help her track us down, as useful as she keeps saying they are. Paralysis, light, silence. Not so good when you don't know where to look.
Invisibility is another brilliant spell of illusion.
The gold on the table rose in the air and vanished from sight as she slipped it into her purse. The door again opened and closed, and all was silent until Osmic and Nitra returned a few minutes later.
That was a fun story. I first found this book when playing Skyrim in a cave, and then again found it when replaying Morrowind. I could not help but laugh at the ending. Illusion is the coolest school of magic as it has the ability to enforce the caster's will on the target. The most infamous use of illusion magic came in 389 when Yegar Than used it to imprison Uriel Septim VII and assume his shape, enabling him to rule the empire in his stead for a decade. Yegar Than's treachery is seen when we play the first game, Elder Scrolls Arena. The Incident of Necrom is an illusion skill book found when playing Morrowind, Oblivion and Skyrim. In Morrowind, you find this book at the residence of Balin Omavel in Balmora. You go to his house when doing the Daedric quest given to you by Mephala. In Oblivion, you find this book at Willowbank, a house in Shane Hall. In Skyrim, you find this book in multiple locations. Pine Moon Cave is one such location northwest of Dragonbridge. So, that was a cool story, our character using illusion magic to save herself from vampires and also outsmart swindlers in Morrowind.